3. Building a radical self-love practice in an age of loathing. Mapping our own way out of shame. Mapping our way out of shame into radical self-love. Recall from chapter 1 my discussion of the 3 pieces, which must reckon with if we want to abandon the body shame army and commence our radical self-love assignment. To recap, kicking body shame in the butt means we must be willing to do the following. 1. Make peace with not understanding. 2. Make peace with difference. 3. Make peace with our own bodies. Well, my friend, we have arrived on the shores of the final P-up to this point. We have unpacked the difference between self-confidence and radical self-love. We have learned why self-love must be a radical act if we want a transformed world. We've revised the ache and discomfort of our body shame origins, disrupt the media and the body shame profit complex, explored the role of government in shaping rights and laws that privilege some bodies while punishing others. We have examined the traumatizing and fatal outcomes of living under a system of body terrorism. If you are currently considering a permanent relocation to the autonomous cave without the government that I mentioned earlier, I want you to know that I do not blame you. Radical self-love can feel like an impossibility when observed beside the lack of body shame we see falling all around us. What I also want you to know is that radical self-love is not an impossibility. It is not even a destination. It is your inherent sense of self. You came here to this planet as an unapologetic radical love. Body terrorism depends on your amnesia for its survival. Our singular focus in this chapter is to help you practice the third piece, making peace with your body. It's not about finding some obscure pathway to the peninsula of like in my things. Making peace with your body is about awakening to who you have always been, the physical, spiritual, and energetic manifestation of radical self-love. Together, we will disturb decades of tired body shame practices, using the only map we ever needed for this journey, the map back to ourselves. Body terrorism is a hideous tower, whose primary support beam is the relief that there is a hierarchy of bodies. We upload the system by internalizing this hierarchy and using it to situate our own value and worth in the world. When our personal value is dependent on the lesser value of other bodies, radical self-love is unachievable. By this point, my hope is that you can see how you and the millions of others have been manipulated into a system of body shame. More importantly, I want you to know that this system is destructible, and fastest way to obliterate its control over us is to do the scary work of tearing down those pillars of hierarchy inside ourselves. At the same time, we must trust that what will be left standing is our own divine enoughness, absence of any need for comparison. Radical reflection. Theodore Roosevelt is famously quoted as saying, "Comparison is the thief of joy." He was totally right. Go get your joy back. Living a radical self-love life is a process of indoctrination. It demands that we look vigilantly at our current set of beliefs about ourselves and the world and get willing to explore them. I call this the act of being fear-facing. Fear-facedness is not the absence of fear, but the interrogation of it. While agonizing over the completion of this book, I spent some time emptying my brain at my friend's home on a private beach in Long Island, Bahamas. The island was slow and kind, like a good grandfather. During one of our excursion, we drove westward down miles of crumbled, unforgiving asphalt until we arrived at a small beach. The sign at the edge of the road read, "Warning, Dean's Hole is the deepest in the world. Swim at your own risk." 2 feet from the beach, just the cerulean water stops being waist high, and within a few steps the ocean floor drops into a cavernous 663 feet deep hole. Despite my being a competent swimmer, fear consumed me. I was certain that my mouth of the deep blue hole would suck and down to the watery floor. In my research, I would later discover that my fear mirrored the exact superstition that keeps native Icelander away from the hole. Needless to say, I kept my distance. It was the Dean's Hole where I met David Carrera, a free diving champion from Italy. Free diving entails using a cable to descend into extreme ocean depth without the use of breathing equipment. David holds his country record with 111-meter dive. Yes, that is the equivalent of diving off a 35-story building. He was taking a break from competition and enjoying the beach with his fellow divers. When we struck up a conversation, it is in these chance encounters that I am reminded that if we are open to it, we will find confirmation of our divine pathway all around us. The dive is a spiritual thing, David said. I learned how to listen to my body. I must listen or I will die in the water. I must learn the difference between fear and danger. He did not know it, but David was describing the journey of radical self-love. It is damn scary to probe the depth of the thoughts, idea, and subconscious principle governing our daily lives. To be fear-facing is to learn distinction between fear and danger. It is to look directly at the source of fear and assess it if we are truly in peril or if we are simply afraid of unknown. The unknown is like a fog. It's like fog, and of course, fog is frightening. Who knows what obstruction would be lacking out? What if there is a deer soon to be splayed off my windshield? What if I careen off a cliff while driving in the thick soup of fog? Living with body shame and body terrorism is to be stuck in the endless what if fog, a place of inertia. The only way out of the fog is through it. We must dive into the unknown, trusting that our bodies will help us discern fear from danger. There is always a clearing on the other side of the fog. To be fear facing is to navigate consciously with alertness, but to continue our journey. Before we parted, I asked David what continue to call him to the sport of free diving. He beamed at me. The Bahamian sun loosened behind him and said, "Every meter is a tiny freedom." Yes, it is. So let's dive in. An apologetic inquiry. Ask yourself, in what ways that the fog of living in a body shape hindered my most amazing life? What is incomplete, unexplored, ignored inside me because of my belief that something about me and my body is wrong? Thinking, being, and doing. You can't self-help your way back to radical self-love. Reading this book will not be enough to get you there, because radical self-love is a return to the love of our whole being. It requires a whole being approach to our lives and bodies. Living a radical self-love is a process of thinking, doing, and being. Have you ever spent time with your thoughts? To talk about the scene from the film, The Exorcist. Our thoughts are an amalgamation of all manners of input mixed with a dash of original content. Often it's a mess in there, a vessel filled with self-loathing and judgment. It's unsurprising that we avoid being present with our thoughts. We think tons of repugnant, petrifying, miserable things about our own bodies and other folks' bodies every single day. It's easy to slip into a pit of shame for having these thoughts. Unfortunately, the sense of shame keeps us distant and detached from our personal center of governance. It puts us out of operational control. Have you ever felt like you were living your life on autopilot? Somehow you just keep recycling old behaviors and ideas that you know do not serve you, but you can't seem to interrupt them. Yeah, in my best Michael Jackson vocal impersonation, you are not alone. That sense of autopilot is the result of being disconnected from our thoughts. Without our awareness, thoughts run cover, operation all through our life, assassinating our sense of worth and blowing up our connection with other humans. When we avoid our thoughts, they go wrong. Awareness of our thoughts highlight the how and why of our behaviors. It gives us a fighting chance and transforming how we live in the world. But how do I break out of the fear of exploring the catacombs of my thoughts? Great questions. Survey says, remember you are not your thoughts. Our thoughts are a hybrid of information from our own experiences, traumas, successes, failures, etc., and massive input from our external world. All those media messages about good bodies and normal bodies, and they are in your thoughts. All the government endorsed ideas of safe bodies and dangerous bodies, they are in your thoughts. You have been given thoughts, and just like that shame sweater, you do not have to keep them. On a flight to Morocco several years ago, I was convinced that all the air all Arab, all male flight attendant crew were terrorists preparing to hijack the plane. What a horrible thought. I felt awful for the judgment and irrational fear I was having about these men based on their bodies. But the truth is, I didn't give myself those thoughts. A 2012 article on the website of Society of Personality and Social Psychology reviewed multiple studies and found that people exposed to Arabs as terrorists media may be more likely to perceive a seemingly neutral interaction with an Arab as threatening or aggressing, thereby influencing the course of the interaction. Constant visual image of Arab men hijacking planes and buses and kidnapping Americans had been poured into my psyche for almost 20 years. Consciously, I knew that those images I saw on television were not a representation of all Arab men. I knew that the US war on terror was causing grave harm to Arab and Muslim people around the world. I did not matter that the statistical likelihood of my plane being hijacked by 12 very attractive uniformed flight attendants was beyond negligible. Per Cato Institute analyzes my chances of dying in an attack committed by foreign-born terrorists were 1 in 3.6 million, also known as not very likely. Radical reflection. Say it again. For the folks in the bleachers, you are not your thoughts. That said, avoiding your thoughts will not help you train your brain to think new ones. You must look at them with gentle kindness and say thank you for sharing, and with love, release them.